Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing It Came From the Net. The topic of this It Came From the Network, the Shield's final check. The reason I'm doing this is I was going through Peacock and I was looking for something to review, and I noticed this, and I thought to myself, George, you've never actually watched that. So I don't know why, but I didn't watch this when it aired back 4 years ago. I mean, it would have made sense for me to watch it. I love The Shield, so I don't know why I didn't. I probably had something I was doing that night or whatever it may be. So I decided, let's watch it now. With that being said, if you haven't seen any of my videos before, I grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. We start the show with highlights of the Shield's career in WWE, which is pretty cool because when it comes down to it and we look at this generation, the Shield is going to be remembered as one of the big things of it. I mean, it's arguably one of the biggest factions in the history of wrestling. It'd be hard pressed to find another faction with as much success. I mean, you have 3 guys that have been world champions that have main evented WrestleManias, main evented in other companies, in the case of Jon Moxley, aka Dean Ambrose, and left an indelible impact on wrestling. The only other factions I could think that have that kind of pedigree would be Evolution, which has 4 world champions, 4 main eventers, and arguably you could actually say 3 because Ric Flair's main event time was over by the time we got to Evolution. And no knock on Rick. Rick's one of the greatest of all time. You can also compare this to the 4 Horsemen, which had Ric Flair, who had main eventers like Flair, Sting, Lex Luger, Sid, and yes, even Chris Benoit as members at times. You could take comparison to the NWO, with Hogan, Nash, Steiner, Booker T, all being part of the NWO, the Giant, Randy Savage, all being NWO members that would go on to do all the same things I mentioned here. The difference, I think, in the Shield, in all of them except for Evolution, is the Shield never had a roster change. Yes, there were times like when Kurt Angle was part of the Shield, but it was never a thing like Rollins gets kicked out of the Shield and is replaced by AJ Styles. Nothing like that ever happened. So we get these 3 guys as the focal. And what 3 guys? I mean, if you look at it now, it could be argued there is not 3 wrestlers in the world more important to their companies than these 3. You got Roman Reigns, who right now is the longest reigning champion since Hulk Hogan days. You got Seth Rollins, who is currently the world champion on Raw. You got Dean Ambrose, aka Jon Moxley, who I would consider the ace of AEW. He's a multiple-time AEW world champion, part of the Blackpool Combat Club, arguably the biggest faction in AEW history, and the 3 star power. I mean, who else are you going to put up there with him? Maybe a Kenny Omega, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes. If these aren't the 3 most important wrestlers in wrestling, they're 3 of the top 5. With that being said, I know I got a little bit long-winded there covering the highlights. We're going to roll into our first match of the show. We get Elias going up against Finn Balor. And it's kind of funny that this is this recent, yet it feels ancient at the same time, because both men have gone in drastically different ways since then. I mean, Finn is now, at the time of this recording, part of the Judgment Day, and a totally different person than what he was here. Where Elias has done a lot of things with the Ezekiel Elias thing. This was highly entertaining. Obviously, it starts off with Elias singing a song. Finn Balor says he wants to sing with him, which ultimately he starts making fun of Elias, which Elias attacks him. I thought this was a really fun, really entertaining match. We tend to forget just how good Elias was wrestling-wise because the gimmick is so good, but he was good. He was more than capable of having a good match with a guy like Finn Balor. I thought this was a really fun match. Ultimately, Finn Balor picks up the win. I'm giving this a 4. Afterwards, Elias stays in the ring. He's going to sing his song. This time he gets interrupted by the Riot Squad, which, if you don't remember, was Ruby Riot, Liv Morgan, and Sarah Logan. I almost called her Ruby Soho. And if I do, just understand, if I say Ruby Soho, I'm talking about Ruby Riot. If I say Jon Moxley, I'm talking about Dean Ambrose. I've got so used to calling them by their newer names that it's hard to switch back, I guess. They sing along with Elias, but they sing terribly, which brings out their opposition. And again, we're going to talk about this here. Much like Elias and Finn, we see two people that have gone through a drastic change. First, we have Bayley. At the time, this was still Bayley with the side ponytail, super fan, ultra white meat babyface version, and her tag team partner, Ember Moon, who's not with the company anymore. She's Athena now in AEW and Ring of Honor. Obviously, neither is Ruby Soho. Sarah Logan has evolved her character to become Valhalla with the Viking Raiders. So just this short time, 4 years, we're seeing a lot of change in wrestling, which if you're watching weekly, you don't notice. It's not as stark as going back to something this recently on how much the wrestling landscape had changed. You gotta remember, this show predates Double or Nothing. The first Double or Nothing, which basically launched AEW, was the first official AEW show. This predates the Bloodline, which is one of the biggest storylines in wrestling history. This is a good match between the teams. I kind of feel like in this match, the teams are represented Ruby Soho or Ruby Riott and Sarah Logan are representing the Riot Squad with Liv on the outside. Commentary talks about Liv Morgan being drafted to a different show, going over to Raw, I believe they said. This ended up being a decent match. I enjoyed it. I expected a little better from all the combatants, if I'm being perfectly honest. Ultimately, Ember Moon and Bayley pick up the win here. I thought it was good. Not much more than that. I'm giving it a 3. Then we roll into the main event, which is going to be a 6-man tag match. On one side, we have Bobby Lashley, Baron Corbin, and Drew McIntyre. And again, talk about the differences. Baron Corbin's probably done about 5 or 6 different things since this time. Lashley has definitely evolved. McIntyre has definitely evolved. And they're going up against the Shield. And again, Roman Reigns has gone on to be the tribal chief, the leader of the Bloodline, cemented himself as one of the all-time greats in WWE. Seth Rollins has gone through some changes to where he's now Seth freaking Rollins in a totally different look and different presentation than what he had here. Dean Ambrose went to AEW starting with Double or Nothing that we talked about earlier and changed into Jon Moxley, his persona before he was in the WWE, and has taken a path of a more violent, almost deathmatch style wrestler. This was Ambrose's last official match with WWE, and it's kind of weird that they did so much celebrating him, and I felt so even at the time. I kind of think they were still trying to get him to sign back with them, and they were trying to show him how important he was to them. I mean, ultimately he didn't sign back, but I think that's what this was here. This was a really fun match. I mean, you got 6 wrestlers that are all really good. The Shield gets to hit all of their stuff. Roman hits a spear, Rollins hits a stomp, Ambrose hits a Dirty Deeds, which is not a great version of Dirty Deed. They get to do the Shield triple power bomb, play all the hits one last time before they break up. And ultimately the Shield picks up the win here. I thought this was a really fun match. I'm giving it a 4. Afterwards, we get a speech with Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. Both get to talk. Very emotional, very cool. I enjoyed that. I enjoy seeing that. It kind of feels like that's something that normally WWE would have cut off of the show and it would have just been for the people in attendance. However, it was cool they kept it on. Overall, I was very entertained by this. It was short. It was just over an hour. I wish they would have showed the entire card because I do believe there was about 5 or 6 other matches. But hey, what are you going to do? Again, I mentioned it several times here. It's a little bit jarring seeing just how different everything is in 4 years, and the wrestling world has totally changed. I would say that the Shield is the catalyst for that change, and I said it earlier, I'll say it again. Probably 3 of the most important wrestlers in wrestling right now, and if not the top 3 of the top 5 for sure. Overall, I'm going to give this show a 4. I thought it was very entertaining. If you haven't seen it, or even if you want to go back and watch it again, I do definitely recommend it. It is a fun watch. It's a quick pace show. It feels more relaxed because ultimately it's a house show. I did very much enjoy this. Again, I have no idea why I didn't watch it the first time, but hey, I got it caught up now. Now, if you made it to the end here, let's smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. If you see where it says join, that's how you become a channel member. Becoming a channel member definitely helps out the channel. We have memberships starting as low as 99 cents if you'd like. If you made it here to the end, let me know who your favorite Shield member is. Is it Ambrose? Is it Rollins? Is it Reigns? Let me know down here in the comments. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching another It Came From The Net.